The massive ship appeared suddenly in Earth's orbit on a quiet Tuesday morning. It hung there, silent and threatening, nearly the size of Manhattan. For 6 hours, it did nothing. The world's governments scrambled their jets, readied their missiles, and waited. Scientists tried to make contact. Religious leaders prayed. Ordinary people looked up at the sky and felt afraid. Then, without warning, every screen on Earth changed at once. TVs, phones, computers, billboards all showed the same message. Your gods have returned. In the small office at the International Space Coalition headquarters, Commander Samantha Wright watched the message flash across her screen. She felt a cold knot form in her stomach. At 42, with gray just starting to touch her short brown hair, Wright had seen many strange things during her 15 years of service. She had commanded the first long-term Mars mission. She had faced solar storms and equipment failures that should have killed everyone. But nothing had prepared her for this. Her phone rang. It was General Peterson. Right, get to the UN building now. They're asking for you specifically. Who is asking? For me? She already knew the answer wouldn't make sense. The visitors. They sent a list of human representatives they will speak with. You're on it. 30 minutes later, a helicopter landed on the UN building's roof. Wright stepped out, straightening her blue uniform. 4 armed guards met her and led her to the main assembly hall. Inside, world leaders sat in tense silence. The Secretary General paced near the central podium. Commander Wright, he said when he saw her. His face looked pale. Thank you for coming quickly. The entity has agreed to appear once everyone on its list has arrived. You are the last one. What do we know about them? Wright asked. Almost nothing. Our weapon systems can't lock onto their ship. Our computers can't scan it. It simply exists, defying our physics. A sudden hush fell over the room. The air in the center of the chamber began to shimmer and twist. Light bent in impossible ways. Then it appeared. The being stood 9 feet tall. Its skin shimmered like liquid gold, and its eyes shifted through every color imaginable. It wore what looked like flowing robes made of light. When it moved, it seemed to flow rather than walk. I am Zephyros, the being said, though its mouth didn't move. The words simply appeared in everyone's minds. I speak for the Celestials, those you once knew as gods. Wright noticed something odd. Despite the being's dramatic entrance, its movements seemed practiced, almost like an actor hitting marks on a stage. We seeded life on this world eons ago, Zephyros continued. We guided your early civilizations. We departed when you needed to develop independence. Now we have returned to claim what is ours. The President of the United States stood up. What exactly do you want from us? The being's eyes flashed. We require tribute, obedience, worship. In exchange, we will elevate your civilization. We will cure your diseases, end your wars, extend your lives. As if to demonstrate, Zephyros pointed at an elderly diplomat from Japan who sat in a wheelchair. The man gasped as golden light surrounded him. When the light faded, he stood up, looking decades younger. The cancer that was killing him is gone, Zephyros announced. This is but a small demonstration of our power. Murmurs filled the room. Several leaders bowed their heads. Some fell to their knees. Wright remained standing, watching carefully. She noticed that when Zephyros thought no one was looking at it directly, its posture changed slightly. It seemed to check something on its wrist, though the movement was barely noticeable. You will construct temples of offering in every major city, Zephyros commanded. Through these, we will provide our gifts and receive your tribute. You have 7 days to begin construction and to prepare your populations for our arrival. The Russian president spoke next. And if we refuse? The temperature in the room dropped suddenly. Frost formed on water glasses. Zephyros grew taller, its light becoming painful to look at directly. Those who rejected their gods in ancient times met suitable ends. Your myths of floods, fire from the sky, and civilizations erased from existence. These were not myths. They were records of consequence. To emphasize this point, Zephyros raised one hand. Outside, storm clouds gathered instantly over New York. Lightning struck in perfect rhythm, forming symbols in the sky. Then, with another gesture, the storms vanished. The demonstration left most of the assembly pale and shaking. Wright, however, was thinking fast. During the display, she had noticed something curious. The storm had begun exactly 4 seconds. After Zephyros raised its hand, a slight delay that seemed significant dot as the world leaders began discussing surrender terms. Wright approached the Secretary General. "Sir, I need to speak with you privately." In a small room off the main chamber, Wright laid out her concerns. "Something isn't right. The being is powerful, yes, but I've noticed inconsistencies. The timing of its miracles seems delayed, as if triggered remotely. And despite claiming to know all about us, it seemed confused by certain modern protocols." The Secretary General looked doubtful. "Commander, it just healed terminal cancer with a gesture and controlled the weather." "What? More proof of divinity would you require?" "Advanced technology can appear like magic," Wright argued. "Remember Arthur C. Clarke's third law? I'm not saying they aren't extremely advanced beings. I'm saying they might not be what they claim to be." "What are you suggesting?" "Give me 48 hours before the world agrees to anything. Let me assemble a small team to investigate. If I'm wrong, we've lost nothing but time." The Secretary General considered this. The world is panicking. Religious institutions are in chaos. People are looking for answers. All the more reason to make sure we're getting the truth, right? Press dot after a long moment. He nodded. 48 hours, Commander, not a minute more." When Wright returned to the main chamber, most leaders were already discussing how to announce the divine return to their citizens. Zephyros stood in the center, radiating power and satisfaction. The being's eyes found Wright's across the room. For just a moment, she thought she saw something there, not godlike serenity, but something much more familiar. Calculation. Wright held the gaze steadily. If this was truly a god, humanity probably had no choice but to submit. But if it wasn't, if this was some kind of cosmic con job, then Commander Samantha Wright was going to figure it out, and she had exactly 48 hours to do it. Commander Wright worked quickly. With only 48 hours to investigate, she needed the right team. She made 3 calls. Dr. Alan Morris arrived first at the secure underground facility beneath the old library. He was tall and thin, with wild gray hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose. As the world's top expert in language patterns and communication, he had helped decode several ancient languages. If anyone could analyze how a god or something pretending to be a god spoke, it was Morris. Kelly Banks came next. She wore her lab coat over jeans and a faded t-shirt that read, "Physics makes me quirky." At 35, she was already famous for her controversial theories about dimensional travel. More importantly, she had developed sensors that could detect energy patterns invisible to standard equipment. George Bertel was the last to arrive. The former intelligence officer moved quietly, his eyes constantly scanning the room. He had spent 20 years investigating cults and manipulation tactics. Now retired, he still maintained a network of contacts in strange places. "Thank you all for coming," Wright said once they were seated in the small conference room. "I know the world is going crazy right now." That was an understatement. Outside, millions were in the streets. Some celebrated the return of the gods. Others protested. Religious leaders argued about whether Zephyros was truly divine or a demon in disguise. Several cults had already formed, promising special favor from the Celestials. I need your help. To answer one question, Wright continued, is Zephyros truly a god, or is something else happening here? Morris adjusted his glasses. An actual deity or advanced aliens pretending to be gods? That's quite the question, Commander. We have less than 2 days before the world governments give their official response, Wright said. I need your expertise. She played the recording of Zephyros from the UN meeting. The team watched in silence as the golden being made its demands. Interesting, Morris said when it finished. Very interesting indeed. What do you see? Wright asked. The language patterns. Arad? It mixes extremely ancient terms with surprisingly modern phrases. For example, it used the term suitable ends when threatening punishment. That phrase wasn't common in ancient texts. It's more modern, appearing mainly in 19th century literature. So it's not speaking like a being that hasn't talked to humans. In thousands of years? Wright asked. Not consistently, no. It's as if someone studied our languages but couldn't quite master the timeline. Kelly was studying readings from the UN building. These energy signatures are fascinating. There's a pattern here that matches theoretical models of quantum displacement technology. In simple terms? Wright asked. It's technology, not magic, Kelly explained. Advanced, certainly, but it follows rules. True magic or divine power wouldn't leave these kinds of energy traces. George hadn't spoken yet. He was flipping through old files on his tablet. Found something? Wright asked him. He nodded slowly. This isn't the first time this has happened. He showed them ancient cave paintings, medieval artwork, and modern. Photos side by side. All showed tall, glowing beings descending from the sky to be worshipped by humans. The pattern is always the same, George explained. A superior being arrives, demands worship, and then begins extracting resources, while keeping the population controlled through fear and religious devotion. Resources? Wright asked. Zephyros didn't mention taking our resources. Those temples. Of offering it once built, George said. I've been looking at the specifications sent to governments. They require locations near mineral deposits and water sources. Wright thought about this. So you think this has happened before? Beings coming to Earth, posing as gods? I think it's happened across history, George confirmed. And possibly to other planets, too. This gave Wright an idea. She contacted NASA and requested data on nearby star systems. 3 hours later, they had their answer. 3 other planets in nearby systems have experienced sudden communication blackouts in the past 2 years. Wright told the team. Each. One right after reporting an unusual celestial phenomenon. Morris had been analyzing more language samples. Commander, I've found something in the old Sumerian texts. References to beings called the Aranid Collective described as false gods who traveled between stars to harvest the gifts of worlds. Wright felt a chill. So we might be dealing with cosmic con artists? Aliens posing as gods to take advantage of less advanced civilizations. It fits the evidence, Kelly agreed. But they're still incredibly advanced. Those miracles Zephyros performed were real, even if they were technology-based. Like showing a smartphone to someone from the Middle Ages, George added. Advanced. Technology would appear magical. Wright nodded. We need more proof, and we need to understand what they really want. Kelly had been working on a special device. I've modified my quantum resonance scanner. In theory, it could disrupt whatever. Projection technology, they're using at least temporarily. That's good, Wright said. But we need more than just exposure. We need leverage. George looked up from his tablet. I might have something. My contacts found reports of strange signals being sent from Earth to somewhere in deep space, right? After Zephyros appeared, they're coming from multiple locations, not just the main ship. They have smaller ships or bases hidden around Earth, Wright asked. Looks that way, George confirmed. A network of them. Wright considered this new information. So they're not just one all-powerful being. They're a group with resources spread out strategically. Morris had been quiet, thinking. Commander, I've been studying the transcript of Zephyros' threats. The specific disasters it mentioned, floods, fire from the sky, these match exactly with catastrophes recorded in multiple ancient cultures. Meaning what? Wright asked. Either it's actually the god who caused those events, or it's studied our history very carefully to know what would frighten us most. As they worked through the night, more pieces fell into place. Kelly detected energy signatures that suggested the divine healing was actually advanced medical nanotechnology. George found evidence that several world leaders had already been implanted with small devices after meeting privately with Zephyros. Mind control? Wright asked when she saw the brain scans. More like influence technology, Kelly explained. It stimulates the pleasure centers of the brain when they comply with Zephyros' suggestions. By morning, Wright had enough to be convinced. Zephyros was not a god. But that still left the question of how to expose a being with such advanced technology without triggering global destruction. The team was exhausted but determined as they gathered around the table for a final strategy session. We can prove they're not gods, Wright said. But they could still destroy our cities with their technology if they wanted to. Unless we find their weakness, Kelly suggested. Morris looked up suddenly. Commander, I've been translating some of the signals George intercepted. I think I know what they're afraid of. He showed them his work. The translated message contained one phrase repeated several times. Maintain isolation protocols. Prevent contact with other harvested worlds. Wright read it twice. They don't want their victims talking to each other. George nodded slowly. Because if one con man is working multiple targets, the whole scam falls apart if the victims compare notes, Wright finished. For the first time since the massive ship had appeared over Earth, Commander Samantha Wright smiled. I think I know how to put a god in its place. As Wright's team worked on their plan, Zephyros increased its demands. The being called for temples of tribute to be built in every major city within 7 days. According to the specifications, these temples needed to be near important resource deposits. Kelly analyzed the temple designs. These aren't religious buildings, she told Wright. They're disguised mining operations. See these structures they call prayer chambers? They're actually designed to extract rare minerals from the ground. Several nations had already pledged their loyalty to Zephyros. Their leaders appeared on television with strange golden marks on their foreheads. They spoke with blank eyes about the divine blessings they had received. Those marks are access points, Kelly explained, showing Wright her scans. They're technological implants disguised as spiritual gifts. Zephyros is literally plugging into their brains. Time was running out. The United Nations had scheduled a ceremony of divine recognition where world leaders would officially accept Zephyros as humanity's returned god. After that, the being would select chosen humans to ascend to celestial status. What does that mean to ascend? Wright asked George, who had been investigating similar patterns throughout history. Based on historical accounts of similar events, the chosen ones become the controllers, George explained. Their minds are completely taken over. They enforce the will of the false gods while maintaining the illusion that they're still human leaders. Wright needed a plan, and she needed it fast. She called an emergency meeting with her team. We have one chance, she told them. The ceremony at the tomorrow. All eyes will be watching. If we're going to expose Zephyros, it has to be then. Morris had been studying the patterns in Zephyros' speech. I've created a translation program that might help. It analyzes the subtle harmonics in the being's voice, the ones we can't consciously hear. I think there's a secondary communication happening beneath what we perceive. Kelly held up a small device. I've modified my quantum resonance scanner. In theory, it should briefly disrupt whatever projection technology they're using to create Zephyros's godlike appearance. And I've confirmed there are at least 6 smaller ships hidden around Earth, George added. They're maintaining some kind of network that supports the main vessel. If we could interrupt that network, even briefly ... Wright nodded. We need to coordinate all of this to happen at once. But we also need a backup plan. If we expose Zephyros, and it decides to destroy us anyway, we need leverage. That's when Wright explained her real plan. It was risky. If she was wrong about what the Aranid Collective feared most, it could mean the end of humanity. But if she was right ... The next day, the United Nations Great Hall was filled with world leaders, religious figures, and media from every country. The ceremony was designed to be the most watched event in human history. Billions of people around the world tuned in. Zephyros appeared in an even more impressive form than before. The being now stood 15 feet tall, its golden skin radiating light that made it painful to look at directly. The air hummed with power. Today, humanity takes its proper place in the cosmic order, Zephyros announced, its voice reaching not just those in the room, but seemingly penetrating into the minds of everyone watching worldwide. Your kind will serve, and in serving, find purpose. The UN Secretary General stepped forward with a document. On behalf of Earth's nations, we recognize your divinity and accept your guidance, he said, his voice slightly mechanical. Wright noticed the same golden mark on his forehead that other influenced leaders had shown. Zephyros had already gotten. To him, this was the moment Wright had been waiting for. She caught Kelly's eye across the room and gave a small nod. Kelly pressed a button on her phone, activating devices they had hidden around the chamber. Wright stepped forward. She wasn't scheduled to speak, but the Secretary General was too surprised to stop her. Before we proceed, Wright said calmly, I have a request of our divine visitor. Zephyros turned its glowing eyes toward her. The being seemed annoyed at the interruption, but also amused. Speak, mortal. Wright's voice was steady. I request that you complete a simple divine demonstration. She held up what looked like a clear crystal cube. Create something from nothing, right here, without using the technology in your ship or the devices your kind is planted around. Earth. The great hall fell silent. For just a moment so brief most people missed it, Zephyros's form flickered. You doubt my divinity? The being's voice thundered, shaking the walls of the chamber. But Wright noticed something new in its tone. Worry. Not at all, Wright replied. A true god would find this trivial. Just one demonstration of genuine creation, not manipulation of existing matter or energy. No technological assistance. The being's eyes narrowed as it realized the trap. Wright's team had deployed technology that temporarily isolated the chamber from external signals. Whatever unseen assistance Zephyros relied on was temporarily cut off. I do not perform tricks for mortals, Zephyros said, but its voice had lost some of its power. Wright took another step forward. It's not a trick. It's a simple test. A true god created the universe from nothing. Surely creating a small object would be effortless. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some looked confused. Others began to look suspicious. Zephyros grew larger, more threatening. Enough of this blasphemy. It roared. The air crackled with energy as the being prepared to strike right down. That was Morris's cue. He activated the linguistic analysis program they'd developed. Suddenly, throughout the chamber, translation overlays appeared on every screen. revealing what Zephyros was actually saying beneath the telepathic projections. The local interference is blocking primary command functions, the true translation read. Requesting emergency extraction from the Central Operation Unit. Simultaneously, Kelly activated the quantum resonance scanner. The golden, godlike form of Zephyros flickered violently. For a brief moment, everyone in the room and everyone watching around the world saw something very different. Instead of a 15-foot golden being of light, they saw a much smaller gray creature with an exoskeleton and multiple limbs. The divine light resolved into visible, technological projections from devices attached to its body. Gasps echoed throughout the hall. People stood up, pointing and shouting. The illusion had been broken, if only for a moment. Zephyros quickly restored its godlike appearance, but it was too late. The truth had been seen by billions. The being's voice took on a colder, more mechanical quality. Very clever for primitives, it said, but understanding doesn't save you. Our technological superiority remains absolute. Your world's defenses are already compromised. A massive ship above the UN building began powering up weapon systems. The floor trembled beneath their feet. Submit now, and we may still allow your species to survive as servants, Zephyros declared. Defy us and witness extinction. World leaders looked to Wright in panic. The gambit had exposed the truth, but they remained hopelessly outmatched. Militarily, Doc Wright maintained her composure. She made eye contact with Kelly, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. It was time for the final phase of the plan. Wright stepped even closer to the angry false god. Before you destroy us, she said, calmly, I have 3 words for you. The chamber was silent. Every eye on Earth watched as this lone human faced down the false god. Zephyros seemed to relish the moment, clearly expecting pleading or surrender. Wright smiled slightly and spoke 3 words clearly into the silence. Others are watching. Confusion crossed the entity's features. What meaningless? Wright nodded to George, who activated the final system. Suddenly, holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber, showing hundreds of signals being broadcast, from Earth to specific coordinates across the galaxy. For the past 48 hours, Wright explained, we've been broadcasting everything. Your true appearance, your ship's technical specifications, your tactics, your weaknesses, all sent directly to every advanced civilization within 500. Light years including several you've previously victimized. She held up a data device. We've also been analyzing your communications. We know the Aranid Collective is small, fewer than 30 ships total. You survive by ensuring no one knows your true nature or limitations. Zephyros's form flickered more violently now. Urgent communications could be heard from the ship above. Multiple. Approaching signatures detected, came the panicked voice of another Aranid. Previous target civilizations have launched response fleets. Defensive systems compromised. For the first time, genuine fear showed on the false god's face. You've built your empire on secrecy and fear, Wright continued. But we've exposed you to the entire sector. The 12 worlds you've conquered now know the truth. And they're coming not just for us, but for you. Alarms blared from the ship above. Zephyros's projection destabilized completely, revealing the small gray creature with its advanced technology. Emergency protocol activated, it hissed. Abandoning operation. Wright stepped forward again. You made one critical mistake, she said to the creature, now struggling to maintain its godlike appearance. You underestimated humans. We question, we investigate, we communicate. Those are our greatest strengths. The Aranid creature backed away. Its voice no longer filled minds, but came normally from its speaking apparatus. This planet is not worth the risk. Consider yourselves fortunate. Before you go, Wright said. Disable all your implants and technology. Release our leaders from your control, or the broadcasts will include the exact frequency needed to disable your cloaking systems. A creature made a sound that might have been a laugh. You bluff. You couldn't possibly. Kelly stepped forward and held up her scanner, frequency isolated and mapped, ready to broadcast. The creature's eyes widened. It tapped something on its wrist, and around the world, hundreds of people, including many in the chamber, suddenly grabbed their heads in pain. The golden marks on their foreheads faded and disappeared. It is done, the creature said. Now we leave. Within minutes, the massive ship began rapidly ascending from Earth orbit. Similar reports came in from around the solar system as hidden. Aranid technology self-destructed or retreated. The UN chamber erupted in chaos. Some people cried in relief. Others shouted questions. Many still looked confused about what had just happened. The Secretary General, now free from the Aranid influence, approached Wright. Commander, you've saved us all. But I must ask, were you really broadcasting to other civilizations? Could they really have come to help us? Wright smiled. We were broadcasting, yes. But the truth is, we had no way to know if anyone would receive our messages in time, or if they'd help us at all. So it was a bluff? He asked, amazed. Not entirely, George explained, joining them. We did detect response signals almost immediately. After we started broadcasting, someone out there was listening. We just couldn't decode what they were saying. The important thing, Wright said, was that the Aranid believed it. Their whole operation depends on keeping their victims isolated and ignorant. The moment they thought their cover was blown across multiple worlds, the risk became too great. Morris approached with his tablet. Commander, you'll want to see this. We're getting clear signals now from at least 3 other star systems. They're sending messages. I think they single quotes thanking us. In the days that followed, Earth faced a new reality. They were not alone in the universe, and not all advanced species were benevolent. The revelation of the Aranid Collective and their false God scheme caused global upheaval. Religious institutions struggled to address what had happened. Governments tried to explain to their citizens that they had nearly been enslaved by cosmic con artists. Yet amid the chaos, something remarkable happened. Humanity united in a way it never had before. Old conflicts seemed small compared to what they had just faced together, and the knowledge that other civilizations existed, some of which had been victims, just like Earth, created a sense of cosmic community. 1 week after Zephyros's retreat, the first clear communication arrived from another world. The translation was rough but understandable. Greetings from Kepler 186F. We too were deceived by the Aranid. Your exposure of their methods has freed our people after 60 years of servitude. We wish to establish peaceful contact. Similar messages arrived from other planets. Each had been visited by the Aranid Collective. Each had been told they were alone in the universe, except for their gods. Each had been exploited for resources and kept in ignorance. Now, thanks to Earth's broadcast, they had found each other. Commander Wright was appointed as Earth's first ambassador to this new interstellar community. As she prepared for the role, she met with her team one last time in their underground facility. I still can't believe it worked, Kelly said, shaking her head. 3 words, just 3 words. It wasn't just the words, Morris pointed out. It was everything that came before. The investigation, the evidence, the broadcast. The words were just the trigger, George nodded. Still, it was pretty impressive. Others are watching. Simple but effective. Wright smiled at her team. The Aranid made a fundamental error. They thought their technology made them gods. But real power isn't about technology. It's about truth. It's about connection. Outside, The world was changing rapidly. Nations were pooling resources to develop new space technologies. Universities were establishing departments of xenolinguistics to better communicate with other worlds. The first interstellar conference was being planned and across the galaxy. The word spread about the small blue planet that had stood up to false gods and won not with superior weapons or technology, but with intelligence, courage, and 3 simple words. So what happens next? Kelly asked as they prepared to leave their makeshift headquarters for the last time. Wright looked at the star map they had created, now showing the locations of other civilizations reaching out to Earth. Now we build something better than what the Aranid offered. Not worship or submission, but partnership. Not fear, but understanding. As she spoke, a new message appeared on their communication screen. This one came from a system they hadn't heard from before. The translation read, "We have tracked the Aranid fleet to their home system. With your permission, Earth, we would like to share this information with all freed worlds. The time has come for the false gods to answer for their deceptions." Right. Read the message twice. Then she typed a simple reply. "We are listening." 1 year had passed since the day Commander Samantha Wright had spoken those 3 words that changed humanity's place in the universe. Earth had transformed in ways no one could have imagined before Wright stood on the observation deck of the VOL, newly built Interstellar Communication Center in Geneva. Through the massive windows, she could see delegates from 7 different worlds mingling in the garden below. Some looked almost human. Others had features that still startled her extra. Limbs, unusual skin colors, sensory organs in unexpected places. Still hard to believe sometimes, isn't it? Alan Morris asked, joining her at the window. The linguist had become essential to Earth's new role in galactic affairs. His translation systems had made communication possible between species that had evolved in completely different environments. Which part? Wright asked with a smile. The aliens, or the fact that we're not alone in having been fooled by false gods? Both, Morris admitted, but mostly that we managed to beat them with words rather than weapons. Kelly Banks approached, carrying a device that hummed softly. In the past year, she had adapted Aranid technology, abandoned during their hasty retreat. The device in her hand could detect energy signatures from across the solar system. The Proxima. Centauri delegation just arrived, Kelly announced. Their ship is docking now. That means all 12 formerly subjugated worlds will be represented at today's council. And the Aranid? Wright asked. George Patel joined them, looking more serious than usual. Our scouts report they've retreated to their home system. They've abandoned all their conquest operations. It seems exposure was indeed their greatest fear. Wright nodded. After their exposure as frauds, the Aranid Collective had lost everything. Their previously conquered worlds had rebelled once they realized the truth. Their advanced technology, while impressive, wasn't enough to control multiple worlds once the fear and religious awe were gone. "It's time," the Secretary General said, approaching their group. "The first official meeting of the Interstellar Protection Alliance is about to begin." They made their way to the Grand Council Chamber. Representatives from Earth and the 12 formerly subjugated planets sat in a circle. Each world had its own story of how the Aranid had come, posing as returning gods or ancient creators. Each had suffered under their rule until Earth's broadcast had revealed the truth. The Secretary General opened the meeting. 1 year ago, we learned we were not alone in the universe. We also learned that advanced technology can appear as magic or divinity to those who don't understand it. Today, we formalize our agreement to protect each other and any other developing worlds from such deception. A tall, blue-skinned delegate from Kepler 186F stood. For 60 years, my people served the beings we thought were gods. We built their extraction facilities. We gave them our resources. We even offered our children for what we thought was divine ascension. The delegate paused, emotion clear in its 4 eyes. Earth's courage showed us the truth. For that, we will be forever grateful. Other delegates shared similar stories. Some worlds had been under Aranid control for centuries. Their cultures had been reshaped around false religions. Their histories had been rewritten. Their resources had been stripped away. When it was Wright's turn to speak, she stood slowly. The past year had been exhausting but rewarding. Earth had gone from believing it was alone in the universe to becoming the center of a new alliance. Earth was lucky, Wright began. We caught on to the deception quickly. But it wasn't just luck. It was also something fundamental about humans. We question, we doubt, we investigate. Those traits that the Aranid saw as flaws turned out to be our greatest strengths. She looked around at the diverse gathering. Together, we've learned that true advancement doesn't come from technology alone. It comes from cooperation, from communication, from shared knowledge. As the meeting continued, plans were made to establish warning systems around developing worlds that might be targeted by the Aranid or similar groups. Technology would be shared between alliance members to ensure no one could be easily dominated. Communication networks would be maintained so no world could be isolated again. After the formal session ended, Wright met privately with the leaders of the alliance in a smaller room. "There's one matter we haven't addressed publicly," said the representative from HD 40307G, a world that had only recently freed itself from Aranid control. What to do about the Aranid themselves? The room grew quiet. This was the difficult question they had been avoiding. "Our combined forces could easily destroy their homeworld now," suggested one delegate. "They are few in number, and most of their fleet was abandoned when they retreated." Wright shook her head. "Destruction isn't the answer. If we destroy them, we become what we feared they were." "Then what do you suggest, Commander?" asked the Secretary General. "We can't risk them rebuilding and trying again with other worlds." Wright had been thinking about this question for months. "I suggest we do what worked before," she said. "We watch, we communicate, we share information." She activated a holographic display showing the Aranid home system. "We establish observation posts, we monitor their activities, and we make sure they know we're doing it." "Others are watching," Morris said quietly, repeating the 3 words that had started it all. "Exactly," Wright confirmed. "We don't need to destroy them. We just need to ensure they can never operate in secret again." The delegates discussed the proposal and eventually agreed. It was a more merciful approach than many had expected, but also a practical one. The Aranid Collective had been neutralized not through superior firepower, but through exposure. Keeping them visible would keep them harmless. As the meeting concluded, Wright stepped outside onto a balcony overlooking Lake Geneva. The night sky above was filled with stars. She thought about how differently she saw those stars now, knowing that around many of them orbited worlds with their own histories, their own struggles, their own people. Kelly joined her on the balcony. "Quite a year," she said, "from commanding space missions to becoming Earth's first interstellar diplomat." Wright smiled. "Not what I expected when I joined the space program." "What happens next?" Kelly asked. "Now that the alliance is formalized?" Wright looked up at the stars again. "We learn from each other. We explore together. We make sure no one else falls for the false god trick again." A shooting star streaked across the sky, actually the arrival of another diplomatic vessel from a distant world that had heard about the alliance and wanted to join. "You know," Wright said, watching the ship's descent, "the Aranid were right about one thing. Humanity did need to find its place in the universe." "And what place is that?" Kelly asked. Wright thought about everything that had happened since that day in the UN chamber. She thought about the 3 words that had changed everything. She thought about the new friendships forming between species that had evolved on different worlds under different suns. Not serving false gods, Wright said. Finally, not conquering or being conquered, but standing together as equals, asking questions, seeking truth, and watching out for each other. As they turned to go back inside, Wright took one last look at the stars. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but also full of dangers. Humanity had faced its first real test and passed, not through superior technology or military might, but through its most human qualities: curiosity, skepticism, courage, and connection. And that, Wright thought, was worth celebrating.